Welcome to Top 10 Secret, where the most mysterious, chilling, and haunting stories come to light. Today, let's uncover the dark and terrifying curses that will send shivers down your spine every time you think about them. Story 1. The Sacred Forest and the Eternal Curse. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a cold, pale blue light that illuminated the path leading into the sacred forest. A place abandoned for centuries, shrouded in a dark legend. Here, ancient trees stood lifeless, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal arms, as if trying to ensnare anyone who dared cross the threshold. Beneath a thick carpet of rotting leaves lay moss-covered gravestones, leaning crosses, and faded inscriptions etched in a forgotten language. Legend had it that this forest was once the last refuge of an ancient cult that had sold their souls to darkness in search of immortality. They performed grotesque rituals on nights of the full moon, offering their own blood to open a gateway to the beyond. But one fateful night, their ritual failed. The portal they summoned did not lead to paradise, but to an abyss of horrors. Screams echoed through the forest, and not a single member of the cult was ever seen again. Since that night, the forest had been abandoned, left to fester in a curse that no one dared challenge. Ethan Carter, a young American archaeologist, scoffed at such superstitions. To him, the sacred forest was not a haunted place, but an untouched treasure trove of history waiting to be uncovered. Determined to prove the legends false, he ventured into the forest alone, armed with only a flashlight, a small knife, and a notebook. As soon as Ethan crossed the threshold, a peculiar chill enveloped him, as though the temperature had plummeted. The chirping of birds and rustling of leaves ceased, replaced by an eerie, oppressive silence. Beneath his feet, the cracked stone path snaked deeper into the ancient cemetery, where the moonlight barely illuminated the twisted shapes of the tombstones. The path led him to the heart of the forest, where a massive, crumbling cross stood amidst the ruins. Scattered around it were broken coffins, bleached bones, and grotesque carvings on the weathered gravestones. A shiver ran down Ethan's spine, but his curiosity pushed him forward. Taking out his notebook, he began to jot down notes, his flashlight sweeping across the shadows. Suddenly, a whisper broke the silence. "What have you come here to seek?" Ethan froze, spinning around, but saw nothing. His heart raced as he tried to convince himself it was just the wind slipping through the trees. But then, the voice came again, clearer this time, dripping with malice. "Foolish intruder, you should not be here." Ethan's flashlight flickered and went out, plunging him into darkness. He felt a freezing breath on the back of his neck. The dim moonlight revealed faint figures emerging from the shadows, dozens of them, draped in tattered black robes. Their faces were pale and eyeless, with dark voids where their sockets should have been. One of the figures stepped forward, its voice a guttural growl. "You have not just entered this place, you have awakened us." Before Ethan could react, the specters lunged at him, their icy hands gripping his arms and legs. He screamed and struggled, but their otherworldly strength was far beyond his own. They dragged him through the forest, deeper into the cemetery. Ethan was thrown into a clearing where a massive pit yawned at the center, surrounded by broken gravestones. He peered into the pit and saw countless corpses piled atop one another, their faces twisted in agony, their hollow eyes frozen in eternal terror. A deep, guttural voice rose from the darkness of the pit. "You will become one of us." Ethan felt himself being pulled into the pit. He screamed for help, but no one was there to hear him. Only the wailing laughter of the ghosts. As he hit the bottom, bony hands clawed at him, dragging him into the pile of corpses. He felt something seeping into his skin, a cold, viscous liquid that spread through his veins like poison. He looked at his hands in horror as his skin turned a sickly gray, his fingernails growing long and razor sharp. His screams grew hoarse as his face contorted, his eyes sinking into deep, empty sockets. The pain faded, but with it, so did his sense of self. Ethan was no longer Ethan. He was now one of the cursed, another lost soul bound to guard the sacred forest for all eternity. That night, eerie laughter, ghostly whispers, and haunting cries echoed through the forest, chilling anyone within earshot. From that day forward, no one dared approach the sacred forest, knowing that any intruder would never return. And beneath the cold glow of the moon, a figure cloaked in black wandered among the graves, its eyeless gaze fixed on any soul foolish enough to disturb its slumber. Story 2. The Demon's Whisper. Nestled at the edge of a forgotten forest stood Blackthorn Manor, a decaying relic of a bygone era. The house was shrouded in dark rumors, whispers of a demon called Hikarion that preyed on those who entered its cursed halls. It was said to feast on despair, luring its victims into madness before consuming their souls. Over the years, countless people had ventured into the manor, some out of curiosity, others out of desperation, and none had ever returned. Grace Harper had heard the stories, but for her, the manor was more than a tale meant to frighten children. It was a key to her past. Years ago, her mother had disappeared, leaving behind only a cryptic journal filled with ramblings about a demon and the promise of escape from pain. Grace, tormented by unanswered questions, was determined to find the truth. The villagers begged her not to go. They told her of the strange lights that flickered in the windows at night, the screams carried on the wind, and the shadowy figure that sometimes appeared at the edge of the forest. But Grace was undeterred. Armed with nothing but her mother's journal, a flashlight, and a steely resolve, she entered Blackthorn Manor. The moment Grace crossed the threshold, a heavy silence engulfed her. The air was thick, oppressive, as if the house itself were alive and watching. The grand foyer was a ruin, cobwebs draped over broken furniture, and the walls were adorned with warped portraits whose eyes seemed to follow her every move. Her flashlight flickered as she opened the journal, her mother's shaky handwriting warning. The house knows. It watches. Don't let it see your fear. Grace moved deeper into the house, her footsteps echoing unnaturally. The silence was punctuated by faint sounds, whispers in a language she couldn't understand, the creak of unseen footsteps, the distant sound of sobbing. She followed the sound, heart pounding, until she found herself in a small room. At the center of the room was an old chair. Surrounding it were claw marks gouged deep into the floor and walls. On the far wall, words were scrawled in what looked like dried blood. It takes the broken. Grace's knees buckled, but she forced herself to stay calm. Sitting in the chair was a mistake. She knew it. Yet something in the room called to her, an invisible force urging her to submit. Against her will, she sat. The moment Grace's body touched the chair, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. Shadows pooled in the corners of the room, swirling together to form a massive, grotesque figure. Its horns twisted toward the ceiling, its eyes glowed with a hellish light, and its skin was a pale, sickly gray like rotting flesh. You came for answers, it hissed, its voice deep and resonant, like the toll of a funeral bell. But what you truly seek is freedom. Grace tried to move, but the demon's clawed hands gripped her head, its fingers sinking into her scalp. Visions exploded in her mind, her mother, crying and begging as the demon loomed over her. The faces of countless others, their mouths frozen in silent screams. And finally, herself, trapped in the manor forever. You carry the same burden as she did, the demon growled. Pain, guilt, regret. It festers in you, doesn't it? Let me take it away. Grace's voice trembled. No, I'm not broken. The demon let out a guttural laugh, its breath cold against her face. You lie to yourself. You are drowning and you know it. The room shifted around her, and suddenly, Grace was no longer in the chair. She was standing in the middle of a dark, endless void. Before her stood her mother, but she was barely recognizable. Her once warm eyes were now hollow, her skin pale and stretched over her bones, her mouth twisted in pain. "Mom?" Grace whispered. Her mother raised her head, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Grace. I thought I could save us, but I failed. It's too late for me. Run." Before Grace could respond, the demon appeared behind her mother, its claws wrapping around her head. With a sickening crunch, it twisted. Her mother's body crumpled to the ground, her lifeless eyes staring up at Grace. The demon turned its gaze to Grace, its smile widening. She was weak, just like you. Grace screamed and tried to run, but the void stretched endlessly in all directions. The demon's laughter echoed around her. "There is no escape. You came here seeking answers, and now you are mine." Shadows surged around Grace, pulling her to the ground. She clawed at the darkness, but it was futile. The demon loomed over her, its claws piercing into her temples. Memories and emotions flooded her mind. Her mother's disappearance, her sleepless nights, the overwhelming guilt that she had never been enough. The demon fed on her anguish, its form growing larger and more grotesque with each passing second. Grace's body began to change. Her skin turned gray, her hair fell in clumps, and her eyes became empty voids. She screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the darkness. Her mind fractured, her identity slipping away until there was nothing left but despair. By the time the sun rose, Blackthorn Manor was silent once more. From a distance, the villagers could see a new figure in the window. A pale, gaunt woman with hollow eyes, staring blankly into the forest. Inside the house, the demon sat in the shadows, waiting for its next victim. Its collection of souls was growing, and Grace Harper was now part of its eternal torment. The last sound that echoed through the manor that night was a faint, sorrowful whisper. "It takes the broken." Story 3. The Curse of the Haunted Mansion. The mansion on the forest's edge, known as Black Howl, had stood for centuries as a silent witness to countless unspeakable tragedies. It was said that on full moon nights, it became the lair of death, with whispers and heavy footsteps drifting through the night breeze. When a group of 5 friends decided to explore the mansion for a chilling YouTube reality video, their excitement quickly turned to terror as the door slammed shut behind them. Everything began to convince them that this was no mere rumor. Inside the mansion, the group found photographs of a noble family from the 19th century. Among them was Eleanor, described as breathtakingly beautiful but with eyes full of sorrow. On full moon nights, people claimed to see her shadow in a tattered wedding dress, wandering the forest. According to legend, Eleanor ended her life after being betrayed by her fiancé. Her anguish and hatred cast a curse on anyone who dared to enter the house. As the group ventured deeper into the house, chilling phenomena began to manifest. One heard faint whispers, while another saw lights flickering incessantly. They found Eleanor's diary in a cabinet, detailing her escalating fear during her final nights before death. The diary revealed that Eleanor had performed a forbidden summoning ritual, a cursed act of vengeance aimed at finding the one who had betrayed her. However, the truth was even more terrifying. Eleanor's spirit had lost all control and now hunted anyone who entered her domain. The group leader proposed splitting up to find an escape route, but this only worsened the situation. One by one, they vanished into the shadows, accompanied by indescribable screams. The haunting climax occurred in the grand living room mirror, where Eleanor appeared, showing each survivor their reflection in a grotesque and horrifying form. The story left a lingering question. Where is the boundary between a curse and the anguish of a soul unloved? Was this Eleanor's fault, or was it the consequence of others' misdeeds? The last remaining member of the group, Anna, found a peculiar box in the center of a room. Inside was a bone charm accompanied by Eleanor's curse. Unintentionally, Anna read it aloud, awakening Eleanor's spirit once more. In an instant, everything began to unravel. Anna saw her reflection in the mirror, but it was no longer her. It was Eleanor smiling coldly. "Now your soul is part of me," Eleanor whispered. Anna was drawn into the mirror. As Eleanor's shadow faded, the house returned to its deathly silence. All traces of the group had disappeared, but rumors claimed that on each full moon, Anna would replace Eleanor, continuing a new cycle of terror. Story 4. The Gatekeeper of Light and Darkness. Azariel was born in the most horrifying moment of the universe, when light and darkness collided, clawing at each other with unrelenting fury. Amid the screams of shattered angels and torn demons, a being emerged from the void. Azariel, with one half glowing in divine brilliance and the other consumed by shadowy abyss, stood tall in the chaos. The moment his blazing golden eyes opened, both heaven and hell trembled. The first beings to face Azariel, whether angels or demons, were obliterated by his mere gaze. His power was neither salvation nor destruction, but a terrifying paradox. Light that inflicted pain and darkness that devoured souls. Within seconds, those around Azariel were twisted into grotesque shapes, their screams echoing across dimensions, warning both realms of the abomination that had come into existence. Though immensely powerful, Azariel couldn't control his abilities. He wandered aimlessly, leaving devastation in his wake. Yet the most terrifying thing wasn't the destruction he caused, but the nightmares that plagued him. Each night, he dreamed of being torn apart by unseen hands, the hands of both angels and demons. They called him Aberration, the cursed offspring. In his dreams, Azariel was dragged into an endless abyss, where countless voices whispered, "You belong nowhere. You are the embodiment of despair. Everything you touch will be destroyed." When he awoke, black blood often streamed from his golden eyes. Night after night, the whispers from his dreams grew louder, and he began to sense something, or someone, hunting him. While traversing a forest of death, where the trees twisted into grotesque forms and the ground was littered with white bones, Azariel heard a call. It wasn't the voice of any living being, but the dark essence within him. The voice led Azariel to a shadowy cavern where no light could penetrate. Inside, he encountered a monstrous being, a formless mass of flesh riddled with hundreds of eyes and mouths. It introduced itself as the Keeper of Ancient Secrets. "Azariel," the creature whispered in overlapping voices. "You think you are an anomaly? No, you are the key, the result of a plan older than heaven or hell. But to uncover the truth, you must pay the price. You must face the darkness within yourself." Guided by the creature, Azariel unlocked an ancient door, covered in cryptic symbols scrawled in dried blood. As the door creaked open, Azariel was confronted with the most horrifying sight. Millions of souls trapped in darkness, all victims of his existence. Twisted faces, hollow eyes, and wide-open mouths screamed in agony, calling his name and cursing him for the torment they endured. Azariel fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of their suffering. Yet, amid the terror, he realized a grim truth. The light within him had imprisoned these souls, and the darkness within him was the key to their release. When Azariel left the cavern, he realized he was no longer alone. Something had been unleashed, a being born from the chaos of his power. The entity, named Umbra, was the embodiment of fear, pain, and hatred that Azariel had ever caused. Umbra was a twisted reflection of Azariel, with tattered black wings and eyes blazing with hellfire. Umbra didn't just hunt Azariel, it sought to consume him, to become the ultimate being. Everywhere Umbra passed, it left terrifying remnants, bodies twisted into impossible shapes, souls drained of life, and endless screams that never faded. Azariel tried to fight Umbra, but every battle left him weaker while Umbra grew stronger. In their final confrontation, Azariel was cornered at the edge of an endless abyss, the very chasm he had seen in his nightmares. The unseen hands emerged once more, dragging him down. But this time, Azariel didn't resist. He allowed himself to sink into the darkness, searching for his true strength. Within the abyss, he saw a final vision, not of an angel, not of a demon, but of himself, whole, unbroken, and unconflicted. When Azariel rose from the depths, Umbra screamed in terror. He was no longer the fractured being of light and shadow, but a complete entity wielding the absolute power of both. In that moment, Umbra was obliterated, not by light or darkness, but by their harmony, a force that defied all universal laws. Though victorious, Azariel did not return to heaven or hell. He became a terrifying legend, a ghost haunting both realms. Weak souls claimed to hear the rustling of wings in the dead of night, followed by a chilling whisper. I am the Gatekeeper. I do not save, nor do I destroy. I exist only to remind you that light and darkness are never apart. And in the dreams of mortals, Azariel's image, with his blazing eyes and torn body, always appeared as a haunting reminder that no one could escape the conflicts within themselves. Story 5. The Red Eyes Under the Blood Moon. On blood moon nights, villagers in remote areas lock their doors and stay as silent as possible, fearing that even the sound of their breathing might attract something sinister. They speak of a man who appears under the crimson glow, cloaked in black, his face obscured by shadows. Walking alongside him is a giant wolf with eyes burning like the fires of hell. Wherever their shadows pass, only death and eternal darkness remain. They call him the Hunter Under the Blood Moon, a being no longer human, yet not fully a demon. But the strangest thing is, despite his terrifying form, those who have glimpsed his red eyes swear they've seen something else. Sorrow and torment, as though the monster was battling against itself. Years ago, he was a ruthless mercenary, a man who lived for killing and wealth. One day, he was hired to destroy a remote village that worshipped an ancient wolf deity. Together with his comrades, he slaughtered the villagers and desecrated the sacred shrine, ignoring the warnings that destroying the temple would unleash an ancient force long sealed away. When he killed the last priestess, a young girl praying at the altar, the moon above turned crimson red. A blood-curdling howl echoed from deep within the shrine. A massive wolf with glowing red eyes emerged, enveloping everything in its shadow. In seconds, all his comrades were torn apart, their screams vanishing as if they had never existed. He was the sole survivor, but it was no blessing. The wolf didn't kill him. Instead, it spoke in a voice as cold and hollow as the abyss. You have disrupted the balance of the world. From now on, you will be my servant, a hunter of souls to atone for what you have destroyed. You will never escape me. From that night, he became something else. On every blood moon, he lost control of himself. The wolf led him through forests, villages, and cities, hunting down unfortunate souls to feed the darkness. Each morning, he would wake surrounded by corpses, his hands drenched in blood. He couldn't remember what had happened, only that he was the cause. The wolf's voice constantly echoed in his mind, a reminder that he was no longer human. But worse still, he began hearing the whispers of the souls he had taken. They called his name, cursed him, and dragged him deeper into the abyss. His eyes, once bright, turned into a glowing crimson, just like the wolf's, as though he was becoming it. One blood moon night, while hunting a group of travelers in the woods, he encountered a mysterious woman named Arlene. She didn't fear him or the wolf. She didn't run. Instead, she looked into his eyes and said, "You are not a monster. You are a victim. But if you don't fight the darkness, you will remain its puppet forever." Arlen revealed she was the last descendant of the priestess he had killed at the shrine years ago. She knew how to break the curse, but to do so, he would have to face his greatest fear. Not the wolf, but himself. Arlen led him to the heart of the Blood Moon Forest, where the crimson light never faded. There, they found an ancient door, inscribed with symbols carved in dried blood. As the door creaked open, he faced the wolf in its true form, massive and more powerful than ever. But this time, the wolf didn't attack him. Instead, it spoke. "Do you think you can defy me? You forget. I am you. You are me. To destroy me is to destroy yourself." The wolf forced him to relive every soul he had taken. The cries of innocent people, the screams of children, and the haunting image of the young priestess staring at him with despair-filled eyes. He fell to his knees, consumed by the overwhelming weight of his guilt. The darkness began to engulf him entirely. Arlen called out to him, but it seemed too late. In his moment of despair, he remembered Arlen's words. "You must face yourself." He rose to his feet, no longer running. Instead of fighting the wolf, he embraced it. In that instant, he accepted everything: his guilt, his darkness, and his own weakness. A blinding light erupted, and the wolf howled one last time before it dissolved into nothingness. But a more horrifying truth awaited him. As the light faded, he realized he was no longer human. The darkness had not vanished. It had become a permanent part of him. The wolf was gone, but he had become its embodiment, forever tied to the blood moon. The man never left the Blood Moon Forest. He became its guardian, ensuring the darkness could not escape to harm others. Yet, those who dared to enter during a blood moon told the same terrifying story. I saw a man with burning red eyes and the shadow of a giant wolf lurking in the mist. They whispered, "The darkness never truly leaves. It waits in the depths to consume your soul." And the wolf's howl still echoes through the forest, haunting anyone who strays too close. Story 6. The Monster in the Mind. Anna was always afraid of the dark. Since she was a child, she believed something lurked beneath her bed, a monster waiting to drag her down into an endless nightmare. Every night, she checked every corner of her room, locked her doors tightly, and kept her nightlight on to keep the darkness at bay. But no matter what she did, the fear never left her. The nightmares persisted, dreams of a monster with no clear form, but with eyes that burned brightly in the darkness, always staring at her. Anna would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding, but when she looked around, there was nothing there. As she grew older, Anna tried to dismiss her fears as childish imagination. She told herself, "There are no monsters. It's all in my head." But that didn't make things any easier. Over time, her fear began to transform, not of something outside her, but of something inside. She started hearing whispers, not from the shadows around her, but from her own mind. The voices were soft, yet haunting, telling her she wasn't good enough, that everyone around her hated her, and that she didn't deserve happiness. At first, she thought they were just intrusive thoughts, but the voices grew louder and clearer, as if they had a consciousness of their own. One night, in a dream, Anna found herself standing in front of a massive mirror. In the reflection, she didn't see herself, but a monster. Its eyes glowed red, its hair twisted into dark, shadowy tendrils, and its face bore a sinister grin she didn't recognize. The monster in the mirror stared at her, and for the first time, it spoke. "You thought I lived under your bed? You were wrong. I've never been there. I've always been here, inside your head, within every dark thought you've ever had. I am you." Terrified, Anna tried to smash the mirror, but it wouldn't break. Each time she struck it, she felt the pain herself. The monster only laughed, its grin growing wider, as though it was consuming her from the inside. When Anna woke up, she realized something. The monster wasn't something outside her. It was her. Her darkest thoughts, her self-doubt, and her inner hatred. It was the product of years of suppressing her pain and anger. But instead of running away, Anna decided to do something she had never dared to do before. Confront it. She looked into the mirror and said, "I know who you are. You are me, and I am you. But you will not control me anymore." For the first time, the monster in the mirror didn't laugh. It stared at her, its red eyes dimming, and slowly, its image faded away. Anna felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Yet, she also knew that the monster hadn't truly disappeared. It was still there, lurking in the corners of her mind, waiting for an opportunity to return. Anna learned to live with the monster. She realized it wasn't her enemy, but a part of herself, one that needed to be acknowledged and controlled. But the scariest truth wasn't the monster's presence. It was the realization that everyone has a monster within them. It may take different forms for each person, but it always exists. And sometimes, in the quietest nights, Anna could still hear its whispers, reminding her, "I never left. I'm always here. Because I am you." Anna's story is everyone's story. Monsters don't hide under our beds or lurk in the shadows. They live in our minds, in our fears, insecurities, and suppressed anger. They can't be destroyed, but they can be accepted, so they no longer control us. And every time you look into a mirror, remember, the monster you fear the most may just be staring back at you. Story 7. The Curse of the Ancient Desert. The Sahara Desert, a vast, arid expanse filled with dangers. Hidden within its endless dunes and swirling sandstorms lies a forbidden area known as the Forgotten Land, where time stands still and darkness reigns. Legends tell of a place where the sands not only swallow those who are lost, but also trap their souls forever. Deep within this cursed land lies something out of place, a shipwreck stranded in the heart of the desert, partially buried by the sands. Beyond the shipwreck stand colossal pyramids, not built by human hands but said to be the tombs of ancient gods. Guarding it all is Anubis, the Egyptian god of death and judgment, his glowing eyes watching over the forbidden expanse. According to the tales, anyone who dares trespass will awaken Anubis, bringing devastation not only upon themselves, but upon the entire human world. In 2025, Dr. Isaac Verne, a renowned yet reckless archaeologist, set his sights on this forbidden land. He had uncovered an ancient scroll in a buried temple near Giza, inscribed with the words, "The treasure of Anubis lies in the desert where time stands still." He who finds it will command life and death. The promise of a treasure capable of altering the world was too enticing to resist. Isaac quickly assembled a team of experts. Mara, a linguist specializing in decoding ancient hieroglyphs. Daniel, a mercenary hired to protect the team from potential threats. Ahmed, a local guide who knew the desert like the back of his hand. Sophia, a young archaeology assistant devoted to Isaac's every endeavor. Despite warnings from the locals about the cursed land, Isaac dismissed them as mere superstition. Blinded by greed and arrogance, he failed to realize he was leading his team straight into a nightmare. After days of battling relentless sandstorms and scorching heat, the team finally stumbled upon the legendary shipwreck. It was a massive vessel resembling an ancient trading ship, its structure decayed but eerily intact, as if time itself had stopped. The ship's hull bore strange carvings, hieroglyphs that Mara quickly deciphered. Her voice trembled as she read aloud, "We have made a grave mistake. Anubis, forgive us and seal us away forever." Isaac smirked. Sealed away? We'll see about that. But his team did not share his amusement. As they approached the pyramids behind the ship, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature dropped sharply, and an icy wind swept through the air. Daniel, the hardened mercenary, suddenly froze in place, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Do you hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" Sophia replied, her voice shaking. "The whispers," Daniel said, his tone uneasy. "It's like someone's calling to me from beneath the sand." The group fell silent, and then they all heard it. At first it was faint, like the wind, but soon the whispers grew louder, more distinct. Disembodied voices echoed from all directions. "Turn back. Leave this place. This is not meant for you." Isaac tried to dismiss it. "Just auditory illusions caused by exhaustion. Keep moving." But deep down, even he felt the creeping fear. They entered the largest pyramid, its massive stone doors groaning under their weight. Inside, their torches illuminated walls etched with scenes of Anubis judging the souls of the dead. Each panel depicted souls being weighed against a feather, with the guilty being dragged into darkness by monstrous creatures. At the heart of the pyramid lay a golden sarcophagus, gleaming eerily in the dim light. Isaac's greed overcame him. "We've found it," he exclaimed. The moment he touched the sarcophagus, a deafening rumble shook the ground. Sand poured from the ceiling as a booming voice reverberated through the chamber. "Fools, you have awakened me." Anubis materialized from the swirling sands, his massive form towering over them. His glowing eyes burned with an otherworldly light, and his voice carried the weight of eternity. One by one, Anubis judged the team. Ahmed, who had betrayed his heritage by leading outsiders to the sacred land, was swallowed by the sand. His screams faded into silence. Mara, who had used her knowledge to distort ancient texts for profit, was transformed into a crumbling scroll, forever entombed within the pyramid. Daniel, the mercenary who had taken countless lives without remorse, was turned into a sand statue, eroded piece by piece by the desert winds. Sophia, blinded by her loyalty to Isaac, disappeared into the shadows without explanation. The terror in her eyes was the last thing anyone saw. Finally, only Isaac remained. He fell to his knees, begging for forgiveness. But Anubis only smirked. "You awakened me. Now your soul belongs to me for eternity." When the sun rose over the desert, it appeared serene, as if nothing had happened. The shipwreck remained where it had always been, and the pyramids loomed in the distance, untouched. But those who passed through the region spoke of new whispers carried by the wind. The voices of Isaac and his team pleading for release. The legend of Anubis lived on. It is said that on certain nights, his colossal figure can be seen against the horizon, his glowing eyes scanning the desert, ensuring no one dares to disturb his rest again. And whenever the wind howls through the dunes, it carries a chilling reminder. Do not awaken the gods. Their judgment is eternal. Story 8. The Whispers of the Spirits. On a misty hill where sunlight rarely shines, stood an ancient, crumbling castle that had been abandoned for centuries. Locals called it the Wailing Castle because of the screams and whispers that echoed from within on dark nights. No one dared to enter the area, not out of fear of the dark, but because of the legends about the three wraiths, cursed entities trapped there for eternity. Ethan, a broken and grief-stricken man, decided to venture into the castle, not out of curiosity or for adventure, but because he had nothing left to lose. His family had perished in a tragic accident, leaving him alone with the haunting voices in his head that constantly blamed him for failing to protect them. When Ethan heard the tales of the castle, he felt drawn to it. He thought that if the place was truly cursed, perhaps he would find answers, or at the very least, an end to his suffering. Armed only with an oil lamp and a small knife, he entered the castle under the cover of night. Inside the castle, the air was cold and heavy, pressing against Ethan's chest like an invisible weight. The walls were covered in green moss, and dark hallways stretched into an endless void. But what unsettled him the most wasn't the desolation. It was the whispers. At first, they were faint, like the wind brushing through the ruins, but they grew louder and clearer with each step. Ethan, why have you come here? You shouldn't have entered. Turn back, before it's too late. Ethan froze, cold sweat trickling down his spine. Who's there? He called out, his voice trembling. There was no reply, only a soft, mocking laughter echoing through the darkness as if unseen entities were ridiculing his fear. As Ethan entered the main hall, the light from his oil lamp illuminated a grotesque scene. The high ceiling loomed above, and broken stone columns leaned precariously. From the shadows, three entities emerged. They were women, their long hair flowing as if caught in an eternal wind. Their faces were distorted with anguish, and their glowing red eyes pierced through the darkness. Their mouths hung open in eternal screams, yet no sound came out. You do not belong here, one of them shrieked, her voice reverberating through the hall. Ethan fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the icy aura and the sheer power radiating from them. But instead of running, he closed his eyes and whispered, I didn't come here to harm anyone. I came here to find an end. The three wraiths circled Ethan, their crimson eyes studying him intently. The one who appeared to be their leader finally spoke. We were once like you, human, but ambition and betrayal bound us to this place. Forever we are cursed souls unable to pass on. Their tragic story unraveled. Centuries ago, they had been three sisters living in the castle. In their greed for power and wealth, they betrayed one another, leading to their deaths. Their betrayal cursed them to be wraiths, eternally trapped in the castle, consumed by their pain and hatred for one another. Ethan felt an inexplicable connection to their plight. He realized that his own suffering and guilt mirrored the curse binding these spirits. Falling to his knees, he clenched his fists and said, I, too, am a lost soul. I live in torment, blaming myself for the deaths of those I loved. If you need my soul to free yourselves, take it. The wraiths stared at him, their glowing eyes softening. But instead of taking his soul, they whispered, You are not to blame. The torment you feel is a punishment you have imposed on yourself. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. What can I do to help you? He asked. The wraiths revealed that to break their curse, Ethan must reignite the castle's heart, a flame that had been extinguished when they died. The heart of the castle lay deep within its basement, guarded by shadows and other tormented souls who wished for the curse to remain. Ethan didn't hesitate. He descended into the basement, where the darkness was so thick it seemed alive. Ghostly figures swirled around him, trying to pull him back, their whispers growing more menacing. But he pressed forward, clutching his oil lamp. Finally, he found a massive furnace, the castle's heart, cold and lifeless. Using the last of his strength, Ethan poured the remaining oil from his lamp into the furnace and lit it. The flame roared to life, illuminating the entire basement. Screams echoed throughout the castle, as if every cursed soul trapped there was being released. The three wraiths appeared one last time, their faces now serene and human once more. They whispered, "Thank you. At last, we are free." Story 9. The Secret of Byron Price. In 1982, a book titled The Secret was published, quickly capturing the attention of people across the world. Unlike ordinary books, it contained cryptic poems and surreal paintings, each designed as a riddle leading to a real-life treasure. The author, Byron Price, had buried 12 treasure boxes across the United States, each containing a key that could be exchanged for priceless gemstones. Price called this book the greatest treasure hunt of all time. But no one knew it would also become a curse, not just for him, but for those who embarked on the hunt. When the book was released, Price declared, "These boxes hold not only treasures, but the soul of a dream. Let the dream guide you." However, he didn't reveal the lengths he had gone to create this game. To protect the treasure from being too easily discovered, Price had reportedly turned to ancient books of spells and cryptography. Rumors even suggested he used mystical rituals to ensure his game was perfect. Soon after the book's release, thousands of people across the US began solving the riddles, attempting to decode the poems and paintings. But no matter how hard they tried, the puzzle seemed almost impossible. Only 2 boxes were ever found, one in Chicago, the other in Cleveland. Those who unearthed them reported an unsettling experience. As they dug, they felt a strange cold wind rising from the ground. They couldn't tell if it was just the breeze or something else. Treasure hunters began to give up. Some claimed that while reading the poems, they could hear whispers emanating from the pages. A few even reported seeing visions of Byron Price in their dreams, standing silently and smiling. In 2005, Byron Price died in a mysterious car accident. Many believed his death wasn't a mere accident, but the result of a curse tied to his own book. Some speculated that Price had infused a part of his soul into the 12 boxes, and when he passed, the remaining boxes became traps, impossible to find without paying a price. After Price's death, the treasure hunt faded but didn't disappear entirely. Those who believed in the curse continued searching, though they feared being ensnared by something far beyond their understanding. John Parker, a researcher of the occult, decided to take up the hunt that so many had abandoned. He was fascinated by the idea that the boxes might not just contain treasures, but also a gateway to a greater mystery. John believed that solving Price's riddles could uncover truths beyond the gemstones. For years, John studied the poems and paintings in The Secret. One night, while poring over the 3rd poem, he heard a faint whisper in his ear. "Go to the light, where shadows lean between time and space." John shivered. He knew these words weren't in the book, yet somehow they guided him to a park in San Francisco. John arrived at the park in the dead of night, carrying the book, a small shovel, and a flashlight. He dug where the poem suggested, and after hours of work, his shovel hit something hard. His heart raced. Carefully, he unearthed a small box encased in glossy black metal. When he opened the box, he didn't find a key or a gemstone. Instead, there was a small mirror inside. Looking into the mirror, John didn't see his own face. Instead, he saw the reflection of Byron Price, smiling back at him. "Welcome," Price said, his voice echoing as if from another dimension. "You've solved the secret, but are you ready to pay the price?" John felt his body being pulled into the mirror. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The reflection of Price faded, replaced by a doorway to a distorted world where time and space seemed to twist endlessly. John realized he had stumbled upon something far beyond the treasure he had been searching for. The next day, park visitors found no trace of John Parker. The treasure hunt resumed for others, but this time, hunters reported a sinister shift. Whenever they approached potential dig sites, they felt watched. Some claimed to see a shadowy figure in the distance, holding a copy of The Secret. The figure resembled Byron Price, or perhaps John Parker. From then on, a new rumor began to spread. Those who seek the treasure will never return the same. They will become part of the secret forever. Story 10. The Curse in the Shadows. In a forgotten corner of the world, where darkness blankets both day and night, there exists an ancient book rumored to carry a curse. The book is called The Song of Safik, a collection of eerie poems said to be a doorway to dark truths and secrets humanity was never meant to uncover. Among its haunting contents is a warning. Walls have ears, doors have eyes, trees have voices, beasts tell lies. Beware the rain, beware the snow, beware the man you think you know. Legend has it that anyone who reads the 13th poem begins to experience strange occurrences. They hear whispers from the walls, see shadows in mirrors, and feel an ever-present gaze following them. Liam, a young and ambitious historian, didn't believe in such rumors. To him, the Song of Safik was simply a historical artifact, a literary enigma worth studying. During a visit to an abandoned library on the outskirts of town, Liam stumbled upon the book. The moment he touched it, he felt an inexplicable chill, as though the book was alive. Yet his curiosity outweighed any unease. He brought the book home and began his research. On the first night, as he read the 13th poem, a cold breeze swept through his room. The walls seemed to shift, and he heard faint whispers. "Stop reading. Leave this place. Before it's too late." Liam felt uneasy but dismissed it as his imagination. From that point on, however, strange things began to happen. In the days that followed, Liam noticed his house no longer felt the same. He felt a constant, invisible presence watching him, a shadowy figure that lurked in every corner. Sometimes he saw reflections in the mirror that didn't match his movements, as though someone, or something, was standing behind him. The whispers grew louder and clearer, no longer confined to his room, but following him wherever he went. At night, his walls creaked and groaned as though someone was tapping from the other side. One evening, while rereading the 13th poem, his window suddenly flung open despite there being no wind. From outside, a voice carried on the air, soft yet chilling. "You should not be here. Stop searching." Liam jumped to his feet, his heart pounding. But when he looked outside, he saw only an empty, silent night. In his research, Liam uncovered a vital clue in the 13th poem. It pointed to an abandoned village deep within a forest, believed to be the origin of the book. Ignoring every warning sign, Liam decided to find this village. The forest was dense and overgrown, with towering trees that blocked out most of the sunlight. When Liam arrived, the air was so heavy it felt like stepping into another world. The village was a ruin. Houses crumbled, trees growing through broken roofs. Though it seemed abandoned, Liam felt as though hundreds of eyes were watching him. From shattered windows, he heard faint whispers. "Turn back. Save yourself before it's too late." At the center of the village, Liam found an old, decrepit church. Its wooden doors bore strange symbols identical to those in the book. Compelled by an unseen force, he pushed the doors open. Inside, the darkness was suffocating. At the far end of the room, he saw an altar with a large, dusty mirror resting upon it. As Liam approached, the mirror began to glow faintly. When he reached out to touch its surface, the room transformed in an instant. The walls started shifting, faces emerging from them, screaming in silent agony. The whispers turned into deafening screams. "You have awakened us. You will never leave." Liam looked into the mirror and saw his reflection, but it wasn't truly his. His face was distorted, his eyes glowing red, and a sinister smile stretched across his lips. From the mirror, shadowy figures began to emerge. They were humanoid in shape, but not entirely human. Their glowing red eyes fixed on Liam, their mouths emitting guttural, unearthly sounds. One of them stepped forward and spoke. "You cannot escape. You are one of us now." Panicking, Liam tried to flee the church, but the doors had vanished. The entities closed in, whispering into his ears. "Accept your fate. This is where you belong." After a desperate struggle, Liam blacked out. When he woke up, he found himself lying in the middle of the village, the book by his side. Everything seemed normal again, but Liam knew deep down he hadn't truly escaped. From that day on, he became part of the village, trapped in an endless cycle between reality and darkness. Every night, if you wander near the forest, you might hear whispers carried on the wind. And if you look closely into the trees, you'll see Liam's shadowy figure standing silently in the ruins, his glowing red eyes gazing out, a warning to anyone who dares approach the Song of Safik. No one knows what Liam truly discovered within the book. But one thing is certain. It is not just a collection of poems, but a gateway to secrets humanity should never uncover. And if you ever come across the book, remember, walls have ears, doors have eyes, trees have voices, beasts tell lies. Beware the rain, beware the snow, beware the man you think you know.